Welcome to the Mid-Week Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, let's talk about this body talk therapy thing. So a few years ago, I was in a very weird space. So my divorce had happened, and with it came like the death of some friendships and the evolution of other existing relationships. Some evolved to getting deeper and, we ended up getting super close to date. And others became weaker to the point that we don't talk as much as we did before. And in the midst of all of this, I had found a new love. And one thing about me is I love loudly, like loudly, recklessly, shamelessly. Like that's just how I am. But because I was still carrying divorce shame, I felt like I couldn't even talk about it or smile too hard. I had to keep it under wraps. Anyway, so during this time, I had become very close to my late mom's friend, Gina Din. In fact, when I was house hunting, she was constantly giving me that motherly love, asking for updates. And when she found out where I was moving to, she scolded me because I was moving to Limuru, which is in a completely different town, not in Nairobi where she lives. And she felt that I would be too far away from her. And I remember going through some divorce processes, and the process is very exhausting emotionally, financially, physically. Like, it's just draining. And I remember going to Gina's for lunch, and she just let me vent. She was just this incredible support system. And it was very clear that Gina had now become my friend. She had also recently lost her sister. And so for quite a few, I want to say years, but I'm not too sure at that time, we'd been leaning on each other in terms of navigating grief, right? So the friendship was blooming at this point. So one day, Gina calls me in the dead of the night. I think it was probably like 8, 9 or 10 p.m. And she says, I have experienced something that you absolutely have to experience. And she talks about how it had given her so much clarity in terms of her grief. And she said the thing was body talk therapy. And I'm like, Gina, what the hell is that? And so she said she can't really explain it, but that I should definitely try it. And she was like, so your birthday's coming up. I've gotten you a session as your birthday gift. And then she sends me the body talk therapist's number. I set up the session, and on D-Day, I go for it. The practitioner's name is Janet. I meet her and we go into a room with like a massage therapist bed, and she introduces herself. She's got great energy, and she even makes a joke saying that she's not a witch doctor, that some things in the session may come off like she knows intimate details about me, but it's my body guiding her. At this point, I'm pretty open-minded about it because I don't know what to expect. And so I lie down on the bed and she taps my wrists. And basically, she's listening to my body, sharing where there are energy blockages, And at a point, she says, do you often have issues with like your throat or your voice? And so I shared with her how when I was on radio back in the day and I hated my job and I just felt so conflicted on what to do about it. Should I quit? What's the next if I quit, etc. I shared how during that period, my voice would constantly be going. And sometimes I would just treat it like it's a flu and do the terrible thing of like self-medicating. You just go and buy Flugon or whatever. But once it went and it had lasted for a while, and I went to AAR, and they couldn't find an infection or flu or inflammation. Like, I remember this young doctor just looking at me like, I do not know what the heck is wrong with you. And I know you're not lying because I can hear that there is no voice. And after I left my radio job, my voice didn't go for years. But back to the session. A week before the session, my new partner had taken me out of town on this incredible surprise trip. And he had literally told me to pack a bag while he was on the way driving to pick me. And I had no idea where I was going, but it was the most incredible getaway trip. It was so beautiful. And it's just like such a core memory for us. And on the trip, I was so happy, but I felt like I couldn't openly share about it because I think I had bought into society's divorce stigma and shame, almost like if you're divorced, you should never find love again. You should sit in a corner because you're a failure, which is absolute bullshit. I remember the last day of the trip feeling that scratchy sensation in my voice while I was feeling the emotions of like, it sucks that I can't really share about this. And I remember thinking, is my voice going? What's happening? What's happening? And then we just, came back home. And so I tell Janet all of this, and she tells me that the voice thing happens whenever I feel like I cannot express myself. And she says, I need to be careful about that because if I keep suppressing my voice and my emotions and my feelings, I could develop thyroid issues. I'm like, what? Okay. So she keeps on tapping, and then towards the end, she goes red and she has goosebumps all over. And she shares that we're not alone in this room. I'm like, girl, what are you talking about? Last I checked, it's just you and me. And she says that there's more than one energy in the room with us. She feels that there is a group, and she says they are applauding me. And then she says they have a question. And so she's asking me, like, are you working on something like a song or like art or like something to do with hair, etc.? Now, at the time, I was working on a poetry anthology. One of the pieces was about hair. And there was also the piece called Home that ended up being my debut film. But like I was writing on and off, and I was like procrastinating with my writing, etc. And no one except my partner knew that I was writing this anthology. Like no one knew I was writing on it. I hadn't posted about it, nothing. And then Janet says that these energies, right, say I should stop procrastinating and keep writing because that project is what will help me impact the world and it will change my life. I just burst into tears. I just burst into tears because for so long I'd felt so alone, you know, to the entire divorce and transition process. I missed my mom so intensely. The process had made me even miss my dad because part of me felt like if I had some strong masculine energy, protective family energy, not romantic masculine energy, I feel like if I had that during that time, some things wouldn't have happened. And so I felt so alone. And this moment with Janet was such a nudge to say, hey, you are never alone. That these energies, even though this intimate detail of stuff that I'm working on that no one knows, outside of myself and my partner, no one knew. I hadn't posted about it, nothing. When I left the session, I just felt like a handbrake in my nervous system had been released. When I was walking out of the space, I genuinely felt like I was floating, That experience changed my life. I got down to just like pouring myself into working on that anthology. And with that, it translated into one of the pieces becoming a fully funded film project, funding the refining of the writing, funded to the production, and then ending up being my debut film. I think this is the first time I've shared this story comprehensively because I just feel like it's so strange that nobody's gonna believe me. And so I'm just like, you know what? Is this going to be my secret with Janet and Gina? Of course, I told about that, and I told, close people in my life about it. But I've never really publicly spoken about it because I just felt like no one would understand, or they would think I'm just over dramatizing something. But like, this is so real. This was my experience. And so when we were setting up my new show For Mannerless Women, I knew that I had to have Janet on the show. And she came on and shared more on what body talk therapy is and how important it is for women to process and release emotions, because otherwise it causes blockages and eventually illness. That's something I'm so passionate about women knowing. And so there's a link in the show notes for you to watch it. And please, after you've watched it, share it with all of the women you care for. Thanks for listening to the Mid-Week Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.